be ashamed that trust in graven images, that say to the molten images, ye are God. Deaf and look ye blind, that ye may see. Who is blind? But my servant, or deaf as my messenger that I send to is blind as he that is perfect, or blind as Yahweh's servant, seeing many things, but thou observest not, opening the ears, but he heareth not. Yahweh is well pleased for his righteousness' sake. He will magnify the law and make it honorable. But there's the people.
Okay, welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing Isaiah 43. I do something about those clips. They're so long. All right. Let's read through it. But now thus saith the Lord that created thee, O Jacob, and he that formed thee, O Israel, fear not. For I have redeemed thee. I have called thee by thy name. Thou art mine. When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow thee. When thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee. For I am the Lord thy God, the Holy One of Israel, thy Savior. I gave Egypt for thy ransom, Ethiopia and Seba for thee. Since thou wast precious in my sight, thou hast been honorable, and I have loved thee. Therefore will I give men for thee and people for thy life. I just realized I didn't discuss that verse really at all. Not the first part. Fear not, for I am with thee. I will bring thy seed from the east and gather thee from the west. I will say to the north, give up, and to the south, keep not back. Bring my sons from far, and my daughters from the ends of the earth. Even every one that is called by my name. For I have created him for my glory. I have formed him. Yea, I have made him. Bring forth the blind people that have eyes. And the deaf that have ears. Let all the nations be gathered together, and let the people be assembled. Who among them can declare this, and show us former things? Let them bring forth their witnesses, that they may be justified. Or let them hear and say, it is truth. Ye are my witnesses, saith the Lord, and my servant whom I have chosen, that ye may know and believe me, and understand that I am he. Before me there was no God formed, neither shall there be after me. I, even I, am the Lord, and beside me there is no Savior. I have declared and have saved and have showed, when there was no strange God among you. Therefore ye are my witnesses, saith the Lord, that I am God. Yea, before the day was, I am he, and there is none that can deliver out of my hand. I will work, and who shall let it? Thus saith the Lord your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel, for your sake have I sent to Babylon, and have brought down all their nobles, and the Chaldeans, whose cry is in the ships. I am the Lord, your Holy One, the Creator of Israel, your King. Thus saith the Lord, which maketh a way in the sea, and a path in the mighty waters, which bringeth forth the chariot and horse, and the army and power, and they shall lie down together. They shall not rise. They are extinct. They are quenched as tow. Remember ye not the former things, neither consider the things of old. Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall ye not know it? I will even make a way in the wilderness, and rivers in the desert. The beast of the field shall honor me. the dragons and the owls, because I give waters in the wilderness and rivers in the desert, to give drink to my people, my chosen. This people have I formed for myself. They shall show forth my praise. But thou hast not called upon me, O Jacob. But thou hast been weary of me, O Israel. Thou hast not brought me the small cattle of thy burnt offerings, neither hast thou honored me with thy sacrifices. I have not caused thee to serve with an offering, nor wearied thee with incense. Thou hast brought me no sweet cane with money, neither hast thou filled me with the fat of thy sacrifices, but thou hast made me to serve with thy sins. Thou hast wearied me with thine iniquities. I, even I, am he that blotteth out thy transgressions for my own sake, and will not remember thy sins. Put me in remembrance, let us plead together. Declare thou that thou mayest be justified. Thy first father hath sinned, and thy teachers have transgressed against me. Therefore I have profaned the princes of the sanctuary, and have given Jacob to the curse, and Israel to reproaches. There's a lot of contrast in this passage. It's like the way it ends there. And the verse that just stopped me for a second was the part where he said, you were precious in my sight and hast been honorable. It contrasts very strongly with the last verse. Well, the last two, because your first father sinned. You're the beginning of your nation, all sinners, the beginning. And all the people down the line, the teachers, those who are supposed to bring the knowledge of God to the next generation, they also transgress. Therefore, he does all these things. He gives Jacob to the curse and Israel to reproaches. The curse, Deuteronomy 28, for example, I'll show you what I mean. Some water. Deuteronomy. Oh, let me just. All right. There we go. Deuteronomy. 20. There'll be some curses in 28. Here you see there's a series of blessings. It shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come upon thee and overtake thee, and if thou hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God. And this gives all, blessed shalt thou be in the city, blessed shalt thou be in the field. And it goes on and on and on with all these blessings. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, verse 15, to observe and do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Cursed shalt thou be thy basket and thy store. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy land, and increase of thy kine, and the flocks of sheep. Cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out. The Lord shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke in all that thou settest thine hand for to do, until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me. The Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee, until he have consumed thee from the land whither thou goest to possess it. The Lord shall smite thee with consumption, and with a fever, and with an inflammation, and with an extreme burning, and with the sword, and with blasting, and with mildew, and they will pursue thee until thou perish. Mildew seems a little weird there at the end, right? I'm not going to look into it right now, but maybe different translation. Mildew that bad. And it does get into things, And you get in your mildew. Does that refer to the... I think about the mill, the woodwork. Is that where it got its name, sort of? I don't know. That just popped in my head. So he will cause you to be smitten before your enemies, and their carcasses shall be meat to all the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the earth, and no man shall fray them away. The Lord will smite, that means shoo the animals. No one's going to bother to even shoo the animals off of you as they devour your bodies. The Lord will smite thee with the botch of Egypt and with the hemorrhoids. And with the scab and with the itch, maybe mildew belongs in this thing. Because what he's saying, because in a sense he's saying, everything's going to be cursed. It'll all be cursed. That's what happened to Jacob. And of course, not Jacob the person. Jacob the person was long dead. And Jacob kept faith with God for his lifetime, as far as, no reports. I mean, he wasn't perfect. It's often pointed out, that Jacob was, one could argue, not exactly dishonest, but definitely, like approaching the line. I mean, when he dressed up like his brother to fool his father, that's pretty dishonest, right? Okay. Even if it was, like, hey, he had it coming. He did that because he couldn't see another way. Usually, we want to find honest ways to do things, preferably. But that's how it went down. That's how he did it. And it's funny because it shouldn't really count, right? What Jacob did. If you're not familiar, Jacob, when it was time for his father Isaac to bless him and Esau, or Esau, the firstborn, he called for him to make him up, something such as he liked of the, game from the field that Esau would bring, because he liked his game that Esau would bring, because Esau was a hunter, really outdoorsy type, kind of hairy guy, and spent a lot of time outside and in the wild, and Isaac was very fond of him. Everyone likes their son to be big and strong, and Jacob was not quite the same. It's never said that Isaac despised him. Not at all, but he did like Esau better, and that's fine, because it's like, you can understand why a father might be more fond, especially because he is his oldest, he is the heir, and so he was going to give it to him, the inheritance. But I don't know if Isaac knew this, but Jacob had already acquired the inheritance from Esau. They'd traded for it. Now, Isaac had no agreement in that, but, they'd traded for it because he had given Esau some soup. And Esau traded his inheritance for it, his birthright. And Jacob then, when it came time, Esau was going to go claim it. Well, Jacob deceived his father and took it first, got his father to pronounce the blessing over him. And so, and that's often commented as, well, it's recognizably deceitful. How else you put about it. But he was obtaining, he was willing to do a lot to obtain God's blessing, which is part of what, as he was coming out of the womb, he was grabbing onto the heel of his brother. He was I don't know what the right word is for it, but, Jacob was a very forward person who was not ready to take second place. And he was always hardworking, intelligent, and very aggressive, and that is, there's something about that too, that that pleases the Lord. When the men busted up the roof of the house to lower their friend for Jesus to heal them, that's what do you're breaking the hoof? Oh, there's something. I mean, someone starts busting holes in my roof, I'm gonna be pissed, especially because I'm fixing it right now. Yeah. I mean, maybe not while I'm fixing it. Someone did bust a hole in the roof a little bit the other day, but but he was commending their faith, or when Zacchaeus climbed up into the tree to see the Lord. When people go out of their way to get God's attention, He responds sometimes. I had to go. When I went significantly out of my way to find God, that's when I found Him. I went significantly out of my way because I thought I'd find Him it's at a place. What was the people there? You know what I mean? But I wanted to pray. I wanted to have certain people pray with me. I've often mentioned that when I went to get the Holy Spirit, I just returned from a trip 100 miles away, and the next day I went back 100 miles just to pray to receive the Holy Spirit, which I did. It seems like when people, and it's not necessarily always about dishonesty, but it is even though it is dishonest, He's willing to do that. because he wants to obtain what God has, in which what he thinks also is rightly his, and he's not wrong. Esau gladly parted with it, and Jacob was the one God chosen. It said, Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. God had done it from the beginning. God had made Jacob in just the way he was. So it's interesting, like I say, I wonder if this is exactly the right feel. I can teach it like this, like the way it sounds. Thou hast been honorable. I think it's more like, I have honored you. You know what I mean? Since thou was precious in my sight, I have honored you, and I have loved thee. But I'm not sure. Let me just check this, because obviously I'm not an expert when it comes to... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm back here. I just started being back here. Thou hast been honorable in verse 4. We're picking up with 13, but I want to address this, because like I said, yesterday, I'm pretty sure I said nothing about that part of the verse. Yeah, it's interesting because... Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't bring it up. Browse the internet. That's what I call this window. Okie dokie. So, it's interesting. Honorable, the word itself means to be heavy, weighty, or burdensome. I'm like, well, I could see a way we could change it there. Let's see what the thought for thought translations say. Because I'll tell you what, even though I'm not fond of always having the thought for thought thing crammed down my throat, I do like having experts try to give what they think what the prophets and apostles and other authors of the scriptures meant, and to make a jump into a more, what is they thinking, and like not translate the words exactly. I appreciate the existence of such translations. That's why when people get mad about the NIV, or whatever other translations they dislike, I'm certainly not mad they exist, and not mad even at the things they changed. Some of them, I don't know. Like I said, my main beef is that it is a thought-for-thought translation, and I prefer, at least for teaching, not to be able to take you through that process whereby they come to these conclusions. Since you are precious and honored in my sight. Yeah, again, I think that is the feel of it. It's not that you behaved yourself honorably, but you were honored. It is you honored, and that's the force of it. As I'm assuming that's correct, I should say. Because actually, I do think the NIV there is probably hitting it a little better. The King James is not a bad translation here, but it's just a little bit of a... It's not the way we would say that. Like if we say you've been honorable, that is a different force than saying you were honored. You have been honored. There you go. You have been honored is what it should be translated. Oh, come on. There's my text. Okay. You have been honored. Okay, that makes more sense. I have honored you. So that fits in with everything we were saying yesterday. So I don't have to somehow compensate for that. Well, because of the contrast of like the curses. Well, I went too far. He gave Jacob to the curse and Israel to reproaches because he'd promised he would. And God had honored Israel. The man Jacob passed away long ago, but the nation itself is like, well, they refer to the nation as a whole as Jacob. Just like the nation Israel. Excuse me. A little stomach gas there. Jacob, as, it'd be like, why do I want to try an analogy? I mean, I think it's pretty clear that the man symbolizes the whole nation. Or the whole nation is symbolized as a man, Jacob. And that's why there is this sort of dual thing, because I love you, Jacob, but I'm cursing you, Jacob. You know what I mean? Meaning my love is upon you. I have put my honor and love towards you, but I am cursing you because it's the promises, that it's the covenant we have with each other. I promise to do this to you. That, and it goes back to the chapter. It says it's the whole point is not to destroy Jacob, but to turn him back to the Lord. And truthfully, Israel, by the time Jesus arrives, Israel had never been more dedicated really to their religion. Throughout their history, they had a lot of problem with, for one, in the ancient world, illiteracy was a problem. And in everyone being responsible for teaching their children and stuff, people don't always do it, right? And that's natural. And here's the thing, and even if you have institutions of learning, this still doesn't work. There's always people falling through the cracks. Those institutes of learning, why is my thing so screwed up? I just realized I got like double pictures of me. Okay, there we go. That was weird. Okay, sorry about that. And on the other side, I got this weird, there we go. All right, I don't want to watch an infinite progression of windows on my side. It starts making my eyes bug out. Anyways, so Jacob is at the same time beloved, and at the same time that because it's a nation, and the people in the nation, just like institutional learning, like you can try to get everyone to teach people the right ways, but it's really hard. And the Jews kind of solved this by means of the Pharisees, because from what I've been told and understand, because I don't have a lot of research on this, but someone explained this to me, that the Pharisee sect were the ones responsible in the centuries before Christ. It developed because after they returned from captivity, they needed to teach the people the law. They needed to teach the Jews their religion, and they wanted to make sure people stuck with it. And so the Pharisees would go around, and they were a literate class. Literate, I said illiterate, not illiterate. They were a literate class who would go around, and it helped, and the Hebrews obviously had, and also after that time, a high level of literacy was promoted through this. That's why Jesus was reading from the scriptures, because he knew how to read. And many were learned how to read because it was considered a national priority. But still, that's still, even so, in those institutions, what happens is you have corruption enter in from the top. And also the fact that no matter how perfect your system is, people are always going to slip through the cracks. And so you do end up with sons of Belial who do evil things. But if you allow the evil to spread and continue, it will infect the whole nation, and then this happens. Especially to Jacob, because they were God's people. Some nations are wicked, and you think to yourself, how long can North Korea go on? The people in that country are enslaved. And it's wicked. But then again, there's no promise. God made no promise to them or to any man. He owes us nothing. The things that happen around us, what do we have to say about them? If they were different, if Hitler hadn't existed, I wouldn't exist either. If there'd never been a Holocaust, how would my family have gotten out of Europe? Like there's a lot more people in the way. Would they have even left? That part of my family that left after World War II. There's all kinds of things affected by things that happen in history. And you start changing them, and you're out of the picture. Your parents never meet, you never get born. You want to change the world? Even the future, it's like, what are we walking into? Because it's like, people talk about their children, and they love their children. I love my children. But it's like, I have no delusion about them being the best possible children one could have. One could have had other children, better children. And my point in saying that is just that we tamper with, or we not tamper with, that's not the right word, because you can't account for the doings of men as far as like interfering with God or anything like that. I'm not saying that. Human beings have no standing on which to say to God, that's not fair. They just don't. Because from God's perspective, if you truly have standing, you have to have like some place to accuse him from. And what exactly does fairness look like? Fairness looks like fairness, it looks something like the heat death of the universe. Like when say in 1 billion years, everything will be the same uniform temperature and everything will be dead. And that's fair. That's where everything gets even Steven. It's exactly the disparities that make things interesting. I mean, hot and cold, big and small. All right, let me pick up the verse we're at. I hate to have a Bible study. Well, it's still the same thought. Whatever. Jacob devour. Well, it's important because this is the subject of the passage. Jacob being cursed and why. Before the day was, I am he. Because we're still focused on that captivity. There's none that can deliver out of my hand. I will work, and who will let it? And this is point is, I am God. Jacob had turned to idols. And like I said, we should not overly congratulate ourselves for not being consumed with idols. Because the idolatry has taken a different... It's just like when Jesus said, you've heard that it was said, thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say to you, whoever looks on a woman to lust after her. So... you've heard it said, thou shalt not bow down to idols and worship them. But I say to you, that he that trusts in anything other than the Lord is an idolater already. You know what I mean? And so, what I'm saying, so the idolatry goes to a much more subtle, deeper level to get to the root causes. And the root cause of idolatry is a fundamental misunderstanding of who God is. That's why it's very clear here who he is. I am he. These are the things I've done. But before the day was, I am he. Before there was even day and night, I just was and am he. There is none that can deliver out of my hand. I will work, and who will let? Who will prevent or whatever. I don't know. I wonder if that's like he who letteth will now let. In the New Testament, because let means there anticipate. Wait, no, not that. No, that means hold back. There, yeah, hold back. He who letteth will now let. It means to restrain. It's weird because we think of the word let as exactly the opposite, right? Let me go, let me loose. But actually, the word let means restrain. Who knew? But let's see in Hebrew if does that hold up? Does that hold up? I want to just check that. I don't care if we're still on the first verse, really. All right, verse 13. Who shall let it? In this case, it means to turn back, return. Not like he who letteth will now let, which is who now restrains in the Greek New Testament. So it's not the same in Hebrew. They're not using the word the same way. They're using let to turn back, that which is a lot more. I will work, and who will turn it back? I kind of knew that's what it meant, but let is sort of like a weird way to express it in modern English, so it seemed a little off. Okay. God's going to work, and no one's going to stop him. Let's see, I've said to Babylon, and brought down all their nobles and the Chaldeans who cry in the ships. I have sent to Babylon. I'm not sure what his reference here is. If this is, if this is like, speaking of the destruction of Babylon, that in the return from captivity that would come via the Persians, when the Persians would, because the Persians would conquer the Babylonian Empire, and the Medes and the Persians, I should say, and Cyrus would return the children of Israel from their captivity, from Babylon. And so brought down, I'm just going to peek at this without bringing up the whole thing again, because it means to brought down. It sounds to me like, obviously, when you bring down the nobles, that's not they're exalted on high, and he's saying, I'm going to bring them down, just like making every valley exalted, every hill made low. Yeah, so that's the idea. The nobles have been brought down, and the Chaldeans, whose cry is in the ships. Don't know what that means. Let's see, that one, I think we should just go see what they say in the Thought for Thought translation. I mean, it could just be a little fact he's throwing out there, but whose cry is in the ships, I never really got that. I mean, it seems pretty, okay, their cries are in the ships. Okay. Interesting. For your sake I will send to Babylon and bring down as fugitives all the Babylonians, and in the ships in which they took pride, whose cry is in. So the outcry, I wonder, that's interesting, that translation of that, because remember, he shall not lift up his voice, nor cause his voice to be heard in the streets. What if that was a sort of a proud thing from chapter 42, if you recall? Remember? Behold my servant whom I uphold, my elect, whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him, and he shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles. That stuff. And it makes you wonder, let's bring that up. Makes me wonder immediately that, like, oh, maybe that's the force. He shall not cry nor lift up or cause voice to be heard in the street that's indicating his pride. Like, look at me! Now, Jesus definitely did not do that. Like, cry out in pride. But he did on one occasion, like on the great day of the feast. He says, come unto me, all ye that heavy come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give thee rest. Was that the one he cried out? No. That was the waters. If any man thirst, I think he cried out. But that was at a feast anyways. I don't know. Like I said, that verse has always been not exactly clear to me. And now this here, the Chaldean whose cry is in the ships. Okay, I brought down all their nobles, and the Chaldeans whose pride is in the ships, and the ships in whom they had pride, which they had pride, whatever. The main thing of this verse is brought down in Babylon. The Babylonians are brought down for the sake of Israel. I am the Lord. That's a long way of getting to the simple conclusion. I am the Lord, your Holy One, the Creator of Israel, your King. Thus saith the Lord, which makes a way in the sea and a path in the mighty waters, which bringeth forth the chariot and a horse, and the army and power. They shall lie down together, they shall not rise. They are extinct, they are quenched as tow. I have to peek at that a little bit. But I am the Lord, your Holy One, the Creator of Israel, your King. The thing is, ultimately, God had been their king, and only were given an earthly king later when they demanded it. But he had always been their king, their lawgiver, and their savior. But they did not always acknowledge him as so. But he has to repeatedly tell them, I am the Lord. Thus saith the Lord, which maketh a way in the sea and a path in the mighty waters. And that comes from back in the days of Egypt. He's bringing it to mind. Which bring forth the chariot and the horse, and the army and the power. All the power of Pharaoh was brought forth to the edge of the sea there, and then God had made a way for them to escape, and they escaped across the sea. The flood stood upright like a wall, and the depths were congealed in the heart of the sea. That's it's funny because when I think about that, that's one of the most fantastic things in the Bible, right? The dividing of the waters. But then again, I mean, yeah, of course, then again, it is one of the most fantastic things, but it's like, I don't know. It's the sort of thing like I can't imagine anyone even thinking of as a tall tale. It's the sort of thing that kind of had to happen. For anyone to even suggest it happen. In my opinion. I mean, outside of faith even, it's just sort of like, it's such a strange thing to say. I mean, like without some sort of basis on which to say it, just to make it up. It's an odd thing to make up. Okay, they are extinct. They are quenched as tow. I'm talking about tow being that very, very, I don't want the word light. Why am I having trouble getting with it? Very fine material that is easily set on fire. But also it's easily, like little bits of straw, but it's also easily put out. I mean, it doesn't make, if you take some straw in the tiny pieces, because that's what tow is, it's like tiny pieces of straw. You can set it on fire, but if you have a lot, it's also easy to quickly put out. Just scatter it and it burns out fast. It's like burning dust or something. I don't know if you have a lot of experience burning different things, but, some things, once they catch on fire, are really on fire, but other things are quickly extinguished. And tow being that nature. Laying out together. I'm just curious about the word extinct. Yeah, and the quick definition for tow says flax, but whatever. It's, it just means like that kind of grass. To go out, be extinguished. To go out. I think extinguished is good. Well, that's for extinct, actually. Oh, there's a big noise in the other room. That's what? That was extinct. So... extinct, quenched. Okay, there's two words that basically mean the same thing. It's funny that they have two words for kaba, which is to be quenched or extinguished, to go out, and the other one is to go out and be extinguished. Whatever. It's just like we have extinguish and quench, and that's basically what extinct. Okay, I just thought that was a little weird. It was more like extinguished and quenched would be probably your two best choices for English in that particular passage. It's not, it's more like their fire is going out than like their species is being, like that. We think of extinction as a very specific thing. So their Babylon's fall foretold. Remember not the former things, neither consider the things of old. Yeah. That's what happened. He's saying, look back. That's what I did. Now I will do a new thing. It's going to come forth. You will see it. Won't you know this? You don't remember the former things. How about the new things? I'll make a way in the wilderness, in the desert, to give drink to my people, my chosen. And I think what he's saying there is, just as they had been carried away captive, that he would make a way for them to return. And that he would, because the water analogy of God is always like he will provide the source and sustenance of life. When there's no water, you're pretty much dead. And God is, when he says he's going to give you water and rivers in the desert, waters in the wilderness to give his people drink, that means I am ready to sustain them. I will make them to flourish. The beasts of the field shall honor me, the dragons and the owls. Dragons, obviously, not a particularly good translation. Once again, King James only. Is this a perfect translation? You think it means dragons? I don't think it means dragons. And, tanning. Oh, it's like it's serpent, dragon, sea monster. Okay, maybe it is dragon. I thought it was the one, because there's one where it's jackals. You know what I mean? Let's see, is this the same one? So Tanim. Though over dragon, I think serpent is a little more appropriate. Though the funny thing is, Well, because he's referring to nature. In the book of Revelation, we have a dragon, a genuine dragon. But, in the Old Testament, when it mentions dragons, it's always wild creatures. It's never mentioning, like, Satan as a dragon. Now, we see the beast in Daniel, but, like, that whole dragon thing is related to the idea of serpent, because serpents and dragons are connected. Because they're considered, dragons are considered to be, as far as mythological creatures, they're kind of like a giant flying lizard, which a snake is also a lizard of a sort, right? Are they technically lizards? Yeah, they're technically lizards, I thought, right? Reptiles, sorry, not lizard. They're not a lizard. Reptiles. Giant flying reptile, not lizard. Yeah, I knew there was something wrong with what I was saying. Yeah, it's reptile. And okay. So, whenever it mentions dragons in the Old Testament, though, it's always kind of referring to the natural world. So I would look at this more like alligators and big snakes and stuff, not actual dragons like the great red dragon of Revelation, which is indeed a dragon. Drakon, and we get the word from it. Literally the Greek word is dragon. So, or the the word from which we derive the idea of dragon. So. And there are monsters in the sea for sure. I mean, from a human perspective, the things in the like sharks and sea crocodiles. The Nile crocodiles are pretty big too. So and definitely attack people sometimes, especially in So they were considering there's gonna be that kind of dragon. I'll say okay. Because it's not talking about symbolic. I mean, I guess, we could talk about, it's symbolic of Satan honoring God. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that's what it means. But the beasts of the field, that just means they will honor him. I mean, the animals too will partake of this, and in their way, honor God. I mean, it's not. I don't know what the figure of speech would be here, but it's sort of like personification, because the beasts don't really give honor. But in some ways, they give more honor than men do. Because, at least the animals do everything they do innocently. Men speak against God maliciously. Men turn their backs on God without considering all that he's done for them. So animals, in some ways, like he said of the rocks, that if these children should keep quiet, the very rocks would cry out. When Jesus was coming to Jerusalem, right? The rocks would cry out. God is able of these stones to raise up children unto Abraham. God can raise up children to Abraham. God can bring forth ways in the wilderness, rivers in the desert. This people have I formed for myself, they shall show forth my praise. That was the whole purpose. Israel was to be not just to be blessed arbitrarily, but also to serve God's purposes, that his name would be known throughout the earth. This is Old Testament teaching. So Messiah came, when they were expecting the Messiah to come, they thought he would go to battle against the nations and subdue them and create a kingdom of God on earth. That's what they believed the Messiah would do, because Israel believed they served the one true God. And they full well knew everyone else around them had gods. I mean, it's obvious they knew this. People act as if they didn't realize that their God was just another tribal God. I've heard that said many times by people. It's like, no, they knew their God wasn't another tribal God, because the other tribal gods did not have the same attitude as Jehovah. They were much more like get along with each other. Like Baal didn't care if you had Molech worship too, as long as you gave Baal his due. You can also worship Molech. You can also worship Ashtaroth. You can favor whichever one you want. The gods of the heathen were not demanding only me. Only the real God talks like that. So I'm saying there are no other gods. I'm the only one. But this is also true. This is God's elect. This is my chosen. Jacob, whom I've chosen. But we also are grafted in through the blood of Christ. We are grafted into the tree that is Abraham's seed. Christians are considered no different than Jews in this, through Christ. But only through Christ. Otherwise, this is Israel. God made them for himself. He created all things for his pleasure, it says in another place. The world is made to please him, not to please men. The purpose of the world is not pleasing men. Men being pleased is not the baseline of fairness. People act like, if I'm happy and comfortable and enjoying myself, that's fair. That's how people think. It's like they don't think like, if I'm dead and everyone else is, that's fair. Like one of the most fair things in the world was Noah's Ark, except for the whole Noah thing. The flood, if it had just killed everybody, that would have been totally fair. It was only unfair. It's not unfair of him to save Noah. That was just really nice of him towards Noah and his family, because Noah found favor in his sight. And also that was God's grace towards the whole world, in that he did not make man extinct, in spite of the evil of men's doings and his purpose to destroy them. And the message of that story is clear, that God does not, like I was saying, God, the fairness thing, God does not see the world the way we see it. The destruction of man is fair. I said it's the fairest thing of all. We've been provided what we've been given all these blessings. We've been given all this life. We've been given all this world to live in. And we're the most thankless. I didn't come up with enough insulting words. I think I'm tired. But we're unthankful, ungrateful. Just as a whole. I know you're thankful, you're grateful. Those of you who love God, and that's what he wants. Show, because that's the appropriate response. Ingratitude is one of the most absolutely disgusting things people show. It is. When people are ungrateful, it's disgusting. Because we ought to be grateful. I don't just mean for life and God, but just for whatever reason. When you ought to be grateful or thankful, you should be thankful. We should be thankful towards God, especially, for all that he's done. But people have not done so. And he forms people to show forth his praise. People to part of the purpose. I got the scripture music I make. The point is to show forth God, to magnify his word, and that the people would know that they ought to praise him. Thou hast not called upon me, O Jacob, but thou hast been weary of me, O Israel. You haven't called on me. You've been weary. So that's the attitude. It's like, guess it's time to pray again, or whatever. People get weary of it. I find it hard to talk to people about that when I'm doing a 1-hour Bible study that I do almost every day. Obviously people who watch this are not weary of talking about God. You might get weary of me, though, so it's okay to stop. I don't want you to feel like you have to keep listening. I always think it's funny that I'm always I'm the poorest self-promoter that has ever, whatever. I don't know if I put myself at that. I don't want to exalt myself in my, sound like I'm bragging about what a bad promoter I am, and could be seen as a brag because it might be a kind of a virtue signal. Because no one likes people who self-promote all the time, right? Here's my Patreon, here's my this, please subscribe and all. I should say subscribe. I do actually go out and try to promote the channels. I do that. I'm just not really good at it. But I do trust the Lord to do it, and also, that if I do the work, if the works are done and they exist and they're available to people, God will help people find them. And that's worked fairly well. I'm just glad people do find it. I wish I was. I don't know that me promoting it would make anything better or different. Because it's like, I don't think that God expects that of me, because that's not my skill set. God had made them for himself, had blessed them, had given nations and people for them, slew all the army of Egypt. And they're just tired of God. What does God want again? It's a terrible thing. And they stop calling on him. I mean, why not? There's always TV shows to watch, movies to take in, culture to enjoy, there's popular music. I mean, the thing is, I know this. It's like on the weekend, I usually watch a movie or something with my kids. And that's all my, just entertainment for the most part for the week. And I don't mean to slam people, but, I'll slam people who have just no time for God, but plenty of time for television and shows and stuff, or comic books, or whatever they are into. They got plenty of time for all this other stuff, but none for God. And I don't know personally. I have no personal examples of people I'm thinking of stuff, but I know that it is. Well, I do. I remember when I used to work with a guy years ago. Literally over 20 years ago. He was actually training me to drive a truck, and he was telling me about his life. How he hated his wife, and basically it was like he went to work where we were working, and then after that he went to UPS for a half a shift in the evening, and then he'd go home at like 9 or 8 or sometime, and he'd watch, I forgot what it was. He would just watch his show, whatever. I think it was The Simpsons or something. I forget. But that was his whole life. But that part was part of it. It was like, I watch The Simpsons, and then I go to bed. That's my life. Work, eat, Simpsons, sleep, or something like. Maybe it wasn't Simpsons. Maybe it was some other. I think it was something else. I don't remember what it was. I don't know why that's coming to my mind. But and he was a godless man. But people are filling their lives with something else. There's other things that they're dedicated to. It's weird to think of like The Simpsons as some sort of idol, and I don't. But we can make an idol out of it. Think about it. A tree is no god. This is God's point when he talks about idolatry. A stone is not a god. You can overlay it with gold, but it's not God. But they do that to things, right? They take mere men and they overlay them with gold. They make them into stars. They present them here, look how beautiful they are. Look at the stars. Go watch the stars in your movies and all that. The stars. It puts a new thought in me on the idea of the stars being cast down when Satan arrives. I've often had this thought that Satan would be very unkind to his people. It says so in Isaiah chapter 14, because thou hast destroyed thy land and slain thy people. The seed of evildoers will never be renowned. There's something about Satan where he turns on his own. Because what would help him establish himself as the fake Jesus better than really laying into the wicked when he first arrives? And of course, since he's truly Satan, he's only taking out his wrath on his own people. That's just a thought I had. But it's to basically seduce the rest. But these are the stars of heaven, not the stars of earth, I don't think so. I still think that part, like I said, I think he may be very unkind to his people. But we'll see. But the other hand, I don't think the stars coming down, the stars of heaven falling, has anything to do with movie stars. I don't. But it was an interesting thought. But they do that. They gild everything. They make everything look good. TV life seems more exciting. I remember being a kid and watching shows where it was kids were in school and noticing how their life in school was very different from my experience in school. It was not the same because they have this sort of propaganda thing about school on TV. They always make it, school's great and cool and fun. And it's like, whatever. You're there to learn, not any other reason, really. And it's a particularly difficult way to learn, in my opinion. Blunt force trauma learning is what it is. Like, well, give it to you 8 hours a day. Surely in that time you can teach them something. I don't blame the teachers so much as the system, because it's like, I don't know how anyone, you're going to give me 30 kids for 8 hours a day. I'm going to make sure every one of them learns how to read. That's rough. I don't know. That's why teachers say, we need help from parents. When I sent my daughter to school, that was the most annoying thing, that I was still homeschooling her. That's the most annoying thing. The most annoying thing about sending your kid to public school when you're a homeschooler is realizing that you still have to homeschool them. Of course I do anyways, but because it's only part-time. But because the system does not, since the child is older, they're able to handle it. But little boys in elementary school, no wonder they're not learning anything. They want to be out running in the grass and having fun, playing with dirt or something, or making war with little sticks and stones, such as boys like to do. You have not brought me the small cattle of thy burnt offerings, neither hast thou honored me with thy sacrifices. I have not caused thee to serve an offering worthy with incense. These two verses, I'll take these two together. Thou hast bought me no sweet cane with money. Because there were different kinds of offerings you would make, like minor cattle, burnt. I don't know what small cattle means. Honestly, I guess I should look it up. I want to ignore it because I'm just like, I don't care, because I don't think that part of the verse is very critical. Small cattle, it says, that's weird. I'll let you see what it is. Because I was just like, what is that? One of a flock, a sheep or goat. Something taken out of a flock. One of a flock. Is it so? Small cattle, it means just taking lesser, small, probably from Sha'ah, the idea of pushing out to graze a member of a flock. A lesser small cattle. I don't get that. So it's like a single animal, whatever. So that is absolutely just translated poorly as far as for understand. It's more confusing. I consider a bad translation that creates confusion. They'd be better off just saying, well, sheep, you, the lamb, or whatever, one of a flock. I get it, small cattle. I guess cattle means of a. In English, does that mean that? Like one of a flock? Why not just brought me an individual cat from the flock? I guess that's how you'd get it in a modern literal translation. I'm not going to look it up. All right. So he's saying, you haven't brought me these burnt offerings, these individual animals that you would kill for a burnt offering. And usually the big offerings like that would be for sins very often because of the blood. Neither hast thou honored me with thy sacrifices. Because what he's saying here, thou hast not brought me the small cattle of thy burnt offerings. You have not honored me with your they've been sacrificing to idols. And I have not caused you to serve with an offering, nor wearied thee with incense. You haven't even hardly, that's the thing, it's like, you've been offering up, in the modern world, you offer up your life and time and attention to all kinds of things, but not to the Lord. And it's not like, you're weary of God, but it's not like, when did you acquire this weariness? How? What did God do to make you tired of him? You know what I mean? How did you get tired of God? I think I know how it happens. You get tired of God because you're not sincere. Because you're going through the motions. If you're just going to church as a go through the motions, you're not really dedicated. Let's say maybe you're sincere but not committed, or let's say you've not the enthusiasm level maybe, because it's a commitment based on a very tenuous amount of faith. Yeah, I mean, it's just because maybe it was done just because of family tradition, right? You're in the church or whatever. But you get out into the world and you don't really God. You're not like God is intruding in all your life. But you go to church every Sunday and it's kind of boring. It's like, and the thing, or whatever you're doing, God is not doing it to you. Cause thee to serve with an offering. I wonder if that means like in the sense of like, because God is saying, you've made me, because later on he goes on. Now I said that before about, you've not brought me the small cattle thy burnt offerings. But he does say, you have made me to serve with your sins. Because the sacrifices were the things that were supposed to relieve their sin burden. That if they bring sacrifices, God would forgive their sins. But instead, they're not bringing it to God, but to other things. And he is made to serve with their sins. Like he has to deal with their sins. Because they don't. They don't deal with their sins by doing the appropriate action, by coming before God and seeking forgiveness and bringing offerings. And the honorable things one would do, like in respect to the Creator, to avoid, to basically say, I know I've done wrong. God forgive me. That they don't do that. They just leave their sins for God to deal with. And they wear him out with their iniquities. Of course, weary. God doesn't, the Lord is neither weary nor faints. It says so. But I won't say personification, but that's wrong. It's when you make anthropomorphism. It's an anthropomorphism. God is being likened to a man, as if God could get tired. Because if he could get tired, he would certainly get tired of this crap. He would certainly be tired of this. That's what it means. It's not saying that he's actually tired. God is never tired. He never slumbers nor sleeps. So say the scriptures. Okay. So they should have been bringing God their offerings. Not doing it. And he's not making them really do. So they're not serving God. Like, I have not made thee to serve with an offering. They're not serving God to justify their weariness and their attitude towards God. It's not like you're going, oh, I'm so tired of serving God all the time. You know what I mean? Like if I was a missionary or something. Not that I always use missionaries because I'm not a big supporter of missionaries or a big proponent of missionaries or an opponent. I don't have a lot of strong opinions about them, but I do know that like it takes a lot to just get up and go into another country to just serve God in that country. Even if, some people have given them bad reports for whatever reasons, because people are fallible and, they don't always do it for the right reasons or whatever. Or they're there for the wrong, who can say, right? I'm not here to judge it or to make it grand. But I just think it is a commitment. I mean, I can generally see someone who like drops their life and picks up and moves someplace else to serve God there. There's something you could say there that they're doing stuff and that they might get tired of it. I'm tired of serving people and they don't care. I'm tired of serving people and not getting paid for it. I'm tired of serving people, of serving God and doing and not getting what I think my due is from it. But that's not the case. They're not serving with an offering or incense. Oh God, I'm just always with the incense and God all the time. I'm tired of it. It's ridiculous. No. They weren't serving God. But they left their sins for God to deal with. He had to deal with their sins. And so he served. And he brought the Assyrian. But also, there's another option. If we look to the Lord, he is the one that can blot out our transgressions. And now remember, and look at he's willing to do it for his own sake. Because of his promise to Abraham. That's why. Because he promised to Abraham their father he would make of them many nations, and that his descendants would be as the stars of heaven, the sands of the sea, and that out of him would come kings, and that in his seed would all the nations of the earth be blessed. You think about that, was written in Genesis. All right? Whatever the scholars say about Genesis, it was long before Jesus. And the stories in Genesis are long predating the captivities. And even if, whatever opinions people say about when certain parts, and they say, oh, we've deconstructed the text and all that, whatever. That promise to Abraham, it's like Christ fulfills it. More, and even if the Jews would say they fulfill it, or they're trying to. But even so, either way, in both, in all things, God is true. All the nations of the earth are blessed because of Israel, because Christ came of Israel. And the Jews have, look at in the government of Persia, the children, the children of the captivity who were made into eunuchs and also into government officials like Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I forgot their original names. You have those things, and that they are also a blessing in a material sense. So some people get angry about it. So there's too many Jews in positions of here and there. The reason they're in those positions is because they're very competent. Like, people always say, well, why are there so many Jewish bankers? I say, why are there so many Jewish scientists? Why? Are they cheating to get into science or something? And nobody disputes their intelligence. Even the people who think they're the sons of Satan. I'm like, well, they're gosh darn competent in that case. And again, I don't want to stereotype Jews like they're all competent. They're certainly not. They're not all smart and competent and above average intelligence, right? Not everybody is. But still, as a whole, is Israel a blessing? I say yes. A blessing to those who bless God. Obviously it's not going to be, but all the nations of the world are certainly blessed through Christ because he is the one who will save us all. He is the one whose blood blots out our transgressions, in whose blood the sins of the world are washed away. Put me in remembrance, let's plead together. He's saying, remind me. Let's have a plead together means like let's have an argument, a dispute. Declare thou that thou mayest be justified. Tell me, you explain yourself here. I want to know what's up here. Thy first father have sinned. I commented on that before. From the beginning, a sinner. I don't know if he means Jacob or Abraham. They all had their sins. But here's the thing: is that they are minor enough. And also, even if they weren't as minor, because some people, like Paul, committed bad sins. Persecuting the church is a bad sin. You know what I mean? But God forgave him. Preemptively, also, you might say, because he struck him down and forced him into service, which he was all too willing once it happened, but if it hadn't happened, it's not gonna, he's not gonna just spontaneously convert. Else, if he would have, then God would not have appeared to him. It had to be stunned into conversion. But even the best is often, even the best are not good enough for God. But he is also gracious to us. Well, just because the only reason I say all that is because we think of Abraham as a righteous man. He was a righteous man from the east. He was a righteous man, but it says Abraham believed God, and it was imputed to him for righteousness. It was his faith that made him a righteous man, and then he kept faith with God. And he wasn't a horrible, evil person who kept people strung up in his tent and skinned them alive. either, obviously. There's some level of, God expects, because there is that sort of thing. It's like he gives us grace that forgives us of our sins, but we also know we just can't do anything. We can't just do whatever we want and continually do that. We can't continually sin against heaven and expect God to continually forgive us. Faith in God means keeping faith with God also. And so when we take on the covenant, we should care about not just, we're saved, but also like, okay, now what does God expect of me? What is my reasonable service? And we know that we are to offer our bodies a living sacrifice. That's a lot of service. And so from their sinfulness it's not just that they were sinners, but they've neglected God. That's the thing, is like, you don't have to be a great sinner, because the greatest sin of all is to violate the first commandment. I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. And people have things in front of God that are their gods in front of God. They're the things they honor more than God, the things they love more than God, the things they serve more than God. People serve, honor, and love things more than God. Those are their idols and their gods. And and it's not so clear and cut and dry as when you have a little statue somewhere. You can say, an idolater, but it is real. And certainly we want to be on guard against it ourselves. But, the degree to which, like I said, idols were everywhere in the cultures that we are talking about when we talk about the ancient times. Idolatry was all over the place. Like in the Roman times, you couldn't walk through a city without idols and altars and everything. So in a sense, being in the world, it's impossible not to be affected by some of it. Like I said, I don't think that the movies themselves are just idolatry. I just want to stop that. All right, 9 o'clock, my power's going out. So that may be I'm going to finish this up. Thank you, Lord. All right. We talked about the curse, the reproaches, that's the princes of the sanctuary, the religious leaders. I might address that because I just got a message from Comad. My power is about to go out. So thanks for joining us today. Look forward to being here again tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. So until then, music, please. And mute. There we go.
They shall be turned back. They should be greatly ashamed that trust in graven images, that say to the molten images, ye are God, deaf and look ye blind, that ye may see. Who is blind but my servant, or deaf as my messenger that I send to his blind, as he that is perfect, or blind as Yahweh's servant, seeing many things, but thou observest not, opening